Alright, section 10.3, solve quadratic equations by completing the square. We will continue working with these quadratic equations, or at least like the trinomial form like what we had from chapter 9. It's going to be graphing them, but we're just going to be solving them. Some of these will be just another method for solving these, and we're going to just take a little step back on the perfect square trinomials. Okay, I'm going to just start out with a few problems, and then I'm going to get into what we need to do by solving these by completing the square. But if we go back a little review, this is back from chapter 10, and we had a problem like this. Say we had x squared minus 12x plus 36 equals 4. All right, so here we have an equation, and we're going to solve for values for x. We're going to first look at ways to factor this left part up here. Perfect square trinomial is what we are looking at on this. And if you remember, if the first term is a perfect square, x squared, and yes, that is. If the second term is a perfect square, and that's 36, and it needs to be a positive for the second term. And yeah, it's a perfect square. 6 times 6 is 36. So then we can factor this to be x minus 6 and x minus 6 equals 4. And you could even check your work if using FOIL on this. But you should remember this was our perfect square trinomial. We factor this. This is from chapter 9, just from last week, so it's just a few days old. And if we combine these, we're going to have x minus 6 squared equals 4. Okay, so now we can solve this. This 4 is a perfect square, so let's take the square root of each side. So we have x minus 6 squared equals 4. Take the square root of this so we can clean up our values here, and we can get this, take care of this squared part. Square root of something squared is just going to be whatever that something is. So that something is x minus 6. And that equals, when we're dealing with square root, we have to account for both positive and negative. So we're going to have positive or negative. Well, square root of 4 is 2. So then our values are going to be x minus 6 equals a positive 2, or x minus 6 equals a negative 2. So we account for both sides. Add 6 to here, x equals 8, or add 6, x equals 4. All right, so that's exactly what we had from chapter 9. There's just a few problems on that, on homework, and we're just those are on there just as review. All right. As we get closer to completing the square, we want to have problems that we can do with the perfect square trinomials. We want to do them where we can factor perfect square trinomials, but what if they are not perfect square trinomials? Okay, so what if, and I'm going to kind of slowly get into this, to make perfect square trinomials. So if I had this is what we want to do to make a perfect square trinomial. Let's have x squared plus, let's say, plus 5, not 5x, x squared plus 10x plus something, c. That's going to take the form of c. X squared plus 10x plus c. What does c have to be a perfect square trinomial? I mean, what does this number have to be so I can have a perfect square trinomial? Well, if you remember, all you need to do is take this middle number. This is a very simple process. Take the middle number, cut it in half. Well, 10 divided by 2 is 5, and then square it. Okay, so to find c, cut middle number in half. middle number, remember that would be the b. So you cut the b in half. Cut the middle number in half, cut this b in half, so 10 divided by 2. Which is 5. And then square it. And so if I square 5, it's going to be 5 squared equals 25. So that's what our c equals. C is going to be 25. All right. So I can easily factor this. X squared plus 10x plus 25 is just your x plus 5, x plus 5. Perfect square trinomial. So there's a couple of problems on here where you have to figure out what this b equals. I'll do another one just so it should help make sense. I'm just going to try and get something from random here. Let's say we had y squared plus, minus, y squared minus 18y plus c. It's either, this has always got to be positive, and this could be negative or positive. So anyway, remember to find c. Take the b value, which is negative 18, cut it in half. Negative 18 divided by 2 is negative 9, and then square it. Negative 9 times negative 9 is a positive 81. All right, so here's our steps to solve. Cut the b in half, and the b is negative 18, so negative 18 divided by 2, that's negative 9. That's negative 9, and then square it. And so negative 9 squared is 81. Negative 9 squared is 81. So to make this a perfect square trinomial, you have y squared minus 18y plus 81. And so if we have to factor this, you guys know what it's going to be. It's going to be y minus 9. Y minus 9, and then you could rewrite it as y minus 9 squared. All right, pretty simple. Cut the b in half and square it, and that's what you want your c to be, so you have a perfect square trinomial. Okay. Now we are going to do some equations where we have to make them perfect square trinomials, and that's what means by completing the square. That's what we're just going to be actually doing. That's the term for this, for completing the square. I will do one of the problems from our homework assignments. X squared plus 4x minus 12. All right, so the best way to go over this, at least to keep your facts straight, I'm going to keep the x squared and the 4x on the left side, and I'm going to get rid of this because I'm going to want to have a number here. So get rid of the minus 12 just by adding 12. All right. So get rid of the minus 12. That's our first step. I'm going to write it over here. Get rid of the minus 12. Well, the way to do that is to add 12 to both sides. So plus 12 plus 12. So we are set up with x squared plus 4x. We got rid of the 12. I'm going to leave a space here. Equals positive 12. 0 plus 12 is 12. So we just rewrote this equation to x squared plus 4x equals 12. Well, we're going to complete the square. So from our last examples that we did, take the b number, which is the 4. So cut the 4 in half and square it. So then, right here, cut the 4 in half and then square it. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared equals 4. All right, so I'm going to add 4. Well, anytime I do one thing to an equation, I got to do this. If I do one thing to one side, I got to do the same thing to the other side. So this side, we're going to add 4. So here's what we have. X squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 12 plus 4, which is 16. So x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 16. All right, we have a perfect square here. So let's factor this. Factor this, you have x plus 2 equals 16, and x plus 2 squared equals 16. We have a squared situation, so take the square root of these, and 16 is, ironically, it works out to be a perfect square. Take the square root of these. When we're squaring these situations, I could have a positive or a negative. So square root of x minus 2 squared is just, of x plus 2 is just x plus 2 equals plus or minus 4. All right, we're back to where we were earlier, where I had just had some refresher type equations. And then we have answer here, x plus 2 equals 4, or x plus 2 equals negative 4. X plus 2 equals negative 4. All right, account for both sides. Subtract 2, so x equals 4 minus 2 is just 2. On this side, subtract 2 minus 2, x equals negative 6. There we have it with completing the square. So we got this original equation, turned it into this by completing the square. All right, factored it, took the square root, solved for x equals 2 or x equals negative 6. So you can even plug those in to check your work. Let me do a few more examples. A few more examples of this, and I'm actually just going to do some off of your homework assignment for the examples. That was number 13 that we just did. Let me do, I'll do 17 here. Yeah, I'll do 17. Number 17 from your assignment. M squared minus 14m plus 30 equals 6. All right, so in order to keep things less confusing, I want to just be working with these two terms. So I'm going to just get rid of this 30. You don't have to, but I think that's probably the easiest way to keep this stuff organized. So get rid of 30 by subtracting 30. Minus 30 minus 30. So now you have m squared minus 14m. I'm going to leave a space. Equals 6 minus 30. It's negative 24. All right, I want to turn this into a perfect square trinomial. Remember, take the negative 14. This is our b. That's our b. Take the negative 14, cut it in half, so it's going to be negative 7, and then square it. So negative 14 divided by 2 equals negative 7, and then square that. Negative 7 squared equals 49. So then add 49 to the left side, add 49 to the right side. We have a perfect square trinomial, and we can factor this, and then we can solve for all of this. All right, m squared minus 14m plus 49, perfect square, m minus 7. Square root of 49 is 7. And it's another m minus 7, but I'm going to go with just m minus 7 squared equals, all right, negative 24 plus 49. That's going to be a positive 25. Yes, that's a perfect square here. Not all of these are going to be perfect squares. But anyway, this one it still turns out that it's a perfect square. So let's take the square root of both sides and we'll solve for m. M minus 7 squared equals 25 squared. When we're dealing with the x squared, I need to account for both positive and negative. So m minus 7 is going to equal plus or minus 5. Square root of 25 equals 5. So m minus 7 equals 5. This is important. Just remember to include both positive and negatives here. M minus 7 equals 5, or m minus 7 equals negative 5. Add 7 to both sides, m equals 12, or add 7, m equals 7, m equals 2. So two possibilities, m equals 12 or m equals 2. All right. Remember, get the first two of these by itself. That's the easiest way to keep this stuff organized. I mean, you could have also figured out what do I need to do to 30 to get 49, and you could realize that you got to just add, add 29. And then if I add 29 to 6, I'm going to end up with 25. I mean, that's another way of thinking about it. But I like to just get rid of this first one altogether. That way I can just work with this right here. So keep your stuff organized and things flow much easier. I'll do a third example. You don't need to watch this if you got this. But I'll go ahead and do a third example, which is going to be another one from your homework assignments. But again, yeah, if you already got this, you can just stop watching and get started with the assignments. Let me do, I'll see how 22 works out. All right, here's 22. P squared minus 2p equals 5. Equals 5. Well, this isn't going to be too hard at all. I don't need to add or subtract anything. I'm just looking for a perfect square trinomial. These two are already the only ones that I'm working with, so I don't need to go and add anything. I don't need to subtract anything to get these by themselves because they're already by themselves. So let's take our b, which is negative 2, cut it in half and square it. So negative 2 divided by 2 equals negative 1, square negative 1 equals 1. So I need to just add 1 to both sides. P squared minus 2p plus 1 equals 5 plus 1. So that's all I'm doing to get a perfect square trinomial here. I just need to add 1. If I add 1 to the left, I got to add 1 to the right side because there's an equal sign. So anyway, we can factor this. These are both perfect squares. P squared is just going to be p. 1 is just going to be a 1. This is minus. So you got p minus 1 and another p minus 1. And 5 plus 1 is 6. So this you have p minus 1 squared equals 6. This is not a perfect square, so I'll just show you how this shows up. Again, take the square root of both sides. So you have p minus 1 squared, square root of this. Take the square root of 6. Well, that doesn't work out nicely, but anyway, it still we're still going to get an answer. We can still do this. Simplifies to just p minus 1. And it's going to be, remember, a positive or negative. You can just leave it as square root 6. If you do square root 6 on your calculator, you end up with, I don't know, a 2.3 and so on. To get p by itself, add 1 to both sides. So you're going to have p equals square root 6 plus 1, or p equals square root 6